Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 132. You'll have to excuse me. Excuse me, because I also ate, just before I'm recording this, so I'm probably going to be a little phlegmy, and all the horrible things that happen after you eat food. Yeah, I made myself another meatball sandwich. That's a classic in this house, for me at least. Ooh, can you hear the crows outside? There's crows outside. I love crows. I was gonna start off talking about what I was doing this last week, but turns out we have a comment that segues directly into that. You know, the stuff that I was doing besides working on a new video, which is happening now. Anyway, comment review time. Whoa, there's that song. Our first comment, the only question, comes to us from Lozy. Thank you for admitting that you are an influencer. Now I am no longer under your spell. This isn't the best podcast in the world. That's how it works. As soon as you acknowledge it, it's like, there's got to be something like that. Like, you have to point it out, and then it vanishes. There's probably something that fits that description. It's like the tooth fairy. My stepsister, when I was growing up, she would tell me that, if you see the tooth fairy, she dies. Which is kind of true, because the tooth fairy is just like your parents. But yeah. You know what's so funny? I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. This is for certain. If you're a certain age in the audience, like if you're quite a bit older than me, by not even 10 years, maybe 5 or more, I hope that this doesn't make you feel terribly old. You know how I found out Santa Claus wasn't real? It was from an episode of Game Grumps. When I was a kid, when Game Grumps started in 2012, because I remember it was the first year, because it was a John episode, I believe. Pretty sure it was a John episode, so that was the first year of the channel. I was huge into Game Grumps for years, and they had an episode in 2012. I was 10 years old, and I was still kind of in Santa Claus kind of thing, and they just had this, but I was starting to have I was starting to be questioning, I was on r/Santa questioning. And they just had this conversation that was, one of them goes when did you find out that Santa wasn't real? And as a kid, I was like, oh no. Oh, my worst fears have been confirmed. No! Isn't that great? I'm sorry if I was the one to break the news to you that Santa Claus isn't real. He's real in your heart, but physically he's not. I'm sorry if I was the one to do that. If you're 10 years old and listening to this podcast, which I doubt there's a single person in the comments who is 10 years old and listening to this podcast. Anyway, he continues. In my case, I know more mainstream things internationally than nationally. It's a shame that times weren't like this several years ago, when I felt strange watching cartoons/anime and playing video games, when society wanted me to believe that they are just things for little children, and it's bad that I still like them. I'll never forget a look in high school that a girl gave me when she saw me playing Pokemon. And what happened years later? People of all ages with their cell phones looking for Pokemon in the streets as if it were Black Friday. It's like a Joker speech. You laughed at me when I played Pokemon. When I played... I gotta do my Heath Ledger Joker impression. I played Pokemon in high school, and everyone laughed at me. And now, all it takes is one app. I'm actually, the Black Friday reference, I know that you live in South America. I was thinking, is that a US thing? Black Friday feels like a religious holiday here. That's why it feels very specific to us, They say we don't have a national religion. In the Constitution, it says we don't have a national religion, but it is consumerism. Now it's mainstream and it's okay to like it, but years ago it was something for little children. Yeah, I mean, it's like, meh, well, at least kids growing up now won't be, what is the word? Isolated? You know what I mean, for liking that kind of stuff. Anyway, when is a general review or great video about JoJo? With so much daily propaganda you do for it, it's strange that you don't have too much of it on the main channel. I don't talk about it every day. Okay. Yeah, I do. It is like one of my favorite things. It is one of my favorite things. And the issue, I guess I could talk about, like on the main channel, I could talk about maybe like some old, like the older JoJo games. Like maybe that would be cool. God damn. I shouldn't eat so much tomato sauce. Yeah, it's just like, well, you know, it's a manga and an anime, and the video games are a little bit like tertiary. They're a little bit more on the side compared to what the main content is. So it's just kind of hard to talk about it. I really want, maybe I could totally make like one of those art analysis videos. I could totally do that on Araki's art style and all that. I think that would actually be really interesting. Because speaking of, I finished my reread of Part 8. It's very long. It's 110 chapters. Took 10 years for him to write. It ran from 2011 to 2021. And so, okay. I'm not gonna go into a ton of detail because I almost want to make a video on my side channel just going through it like arc by arc. Before I did this reread, so mind you, I caught up to Jojolion around chapter 70 of the manga. It's around the start of the poor Tom Ozone Baby fight. If you guys have read it before, it's I think exactly like the chapter that it begins, or just about. So the last like roughly 40 chapters of the manga, that's what I read month to month as it was coming out. And I really didn't know how to feel about it. I really didn't know. I was like, I feel like it got kind of weird. I didn't know where it was going. There's all these like plot points that I feel like are still kind of dangling and like that never came back up. And a lot of people were really disappointed with the ending and the main villain. And I remember being really disappointed with the way that it ended. It wasn't like as hype as I think I wanted it to be. But I had this thing like, well, it's definitely weird reading it month to month as opposed to just all in one go, which I'd read every other part like. And I was like, maybe do I have a weird perspective on it because I've read it month to month? And that's why I wanted to do this reread. So before the reread, I would have told you that Jojolion was the first half of JoJo, if you asked me what I thought about it, I would have said the first half is interesting, and then the midpoint, like the midpoint arc is like fantastic. It was like like high point of the entire series kind of thing. And then the second half was a little weird. Kind of weird, a little directionless at times. It didn't quite know what was going on. And then the ending, I think the ending was good. I think I understood what Araki was trying to do, but I don't know if he communicated it. I don't think he executed it in the best possible way. Now, having reread it, I would say the same thing about the first half. The middle part, the Vitamin C arc, is still like one of the best thing. I think it's solidified it as like one of the best arcs just overall in JoJo. The second half, it kicks off with some kind of weak arcs. Like I think the two worst arcs in the part happen like right after that. Not like terrible, just like. It really doesn't work for me. I don't think it's that. I could go into more depth, but yeah. And then around again the start of chapter 70, which is where I caught up. I think chapter set like Ozone Baby to the end of the manga, I think is like, I'm gonna be real, I think it's some of the best stuff Araki's ever written. I think it is like genuinely like cover to cover flawless. It is so fucking good. I was really shocked at how much more I enjoyed part 8 on a reread. I've come to realize I think Araki's writing is at its best when you just kind of let him take the wheel. When you just kind of let him take you, like Marvel 2, take you for a ride. So I remember reading it, and there's all these, like, oh, but, like, this character doesn't come like this guy. And there's all these things that, like, because you have so much time in between chapters that it kind of kills the pacing of the manga in a way. And when you're doing such a complex story with so many characters and so many little story elements, you just, you know, people, oh, Araki, he's never going to bring this thing back up. He forgot about this thing. And it's like, there's still time, but I don't know. And I remember just reading it month to month and thinking, okay, I think I know how this is going to go. And then the next chapter would come out and I would say, okay, maybe not quite how I imagined it. And then the next chapter would come out and I would, okay, really not how I thought that this was gonna go. And then the next, I have no idea. I have no fucking clue how this is going. How does this end in 3 chapters? What is going on? And again, on reread, I think it just works so much better. Things that I hated. Okay, this is not a spoiler thing, but dude, when those fucking rock insects show up during that one moment, and then he brings out the other one, and everyone's, oh, dude, can you not? God, everyone hated that stuff. Dude, on a reread, I didn't even care. Like, it just flew by. It was like one chapter, you know, next one's coming right up. It didn't matter. At that point, it was like the experience of reading it month to month made people so impatient for just answers and things and big things to happen. So when you have him take his time a little bit in this climactic arc and be like, yeah, so for a moment, the character's going to stop and just like doing a little experiment. It's such a short action sequence. Honestly, like if it was an episode of the anime, it would be like 5 minutes of the episode or something or less, you know? Like not a big deal at all. But month to month, oh my god, can you please just get to the point, Araki? Can something just happen? People were like being edged for so long on payoffs. And, you know, I really didn't know how to feel about the main villain. I don't even want to spoil who it is because they show up so late into the part. And I didn't know how to feel about them. And I think on reread, I really like them. I think they a lot of people say like, oh, they should have gotten more screen time. They should have been introduced earlier. And, you know, I didn't feel that the second time around. I think they got I think that for the amount of the story they were in, and once you kind of read, okay, there's another issue where this is like, it's so hard to not talk about with spoilers, but you realize on a reread, there's a reveal about this one character that they have been acting like things that seemed unconnected to them are actually them. And when you read it with that in mind, I think it helps, it technically boosts a lot of their impact and their influence on the story. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. It increases their reading. I was like, oh, okay, so this tells me a lot more about this character because I'm seeing this thing, which at the time I had no idea was connected to them. I really like them. I think they're kind of pretty compelling, and I think that they form this great triumvirate of them. The villain, Josuke, and Jobin form this really interesting triumvirate of characters that's almost, I think it's very similar to like Johnny, Diego, and Valentine in part 7. And yeah, I don't know, I really liked it. And the end, I got really emotional. I'm not going to go into it because it's kind of personal stuff, but there were parts at the end of this that kind of made me like undergo a change in my life, which sounds really extreme and it's like a personal thing, but really made me kind of like undergo character development in real life kind of thing. Oh god, I'm gonna sneeze. Yeah. So I think the low points of Jojolion are kind of meh. There are things I'm genuinely disappointed in. The biggest one being that you can tell Araki completely ran out of ideas for soft and wet after like the first third of the story. Josuke uses soft and wet in all these cool, unique ways early on. Like, oh, I'm going to steal the friction from the floor. I'm going to steal someone's eyesight. I'm going to steal water from someone's body so that they get up and they go, like, and they get distracted because they're thirsty. I'm going to, like, literally steal hair off of a cat to put it over a camera. Like, cool little uses of it. I'm going to put sound in a bubble to make someone think they heard something. And then after a certain point, after, like, I Am a Rock, he just stops using it like that. Like, he just uses it to, like, either move things or put things in the bubbles, like whole not properties of things, like whole physical objects. And it's just kind of, like, disappointing. It's such a cool ability, and then he just stops. He really does just, like... There might be one or two tiny little instances of him technically taking a property from something, but it's so few and far between, and it's like, oh man, that's kind of lame. When it was an ability that had so much potential, I feel, and Araki has written really interesting, unique abilities for his protagonists before that they use in all these cool, creative ways. It's one of the reasons I love Giorno so much, because I just love seeing what he does with Gold Experience. Yeah, that's like one of the bigger things that I'm disappointed in. But as a character, I really do like Josuke. I like a lot of the characters. I don't know, man. I think it's supplanted part 2 as my third favorite part of JoJo, which might not sound like a compliment, but for the longest time, I would have told you that my order of favorite parts was 5, 7, 2. And now I think it's 5, 7, 8, if I'm going to be real. I think part 8 is really... I think the best parts of part 8 are some of the best material Araki's ever written. Just consistently best material. And the good parts of part 8 are good for a while. Like, that Vitamin C arc is like 10 chapters long. The last 40 chapters of this manga are awesome. They're so good. And, yeah, I my opinion of part 8 it's ameliorated quite a bit. So that's what I have to say about that. Hey, you know what I saw that totally whacked me out? Apparently Smite 2 is a thing that's happening. Smite 2. This isn't like a CSGO 2 where it's like an engine physics overhaul where they're gonna just like replace the original game. And I know that fucked up a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people don't like CSGO 2 now because like a bunch of stuff about the engine change that makes it play differently. And I've heard stuff. I'm not familiar enough with the game, but that kind of like replacement thing sort of makes sense to me. I wish that they at least kept the original CSGO as an option, you know. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like logically that makes sense to me to be like, okay, this is the new version of the game that's going to get like the official server support and all that and all that. Smite 2 does not appear to be that. It's a remake of Smite in Unreal 5. And I look at the footage and I'm like, I haven't played Smite in a while, but I don't know if it was worth it. Maybe technically it was worth it and it's going to scale better in the future, but in terms of a graphical upgrade, the kind of game that it is with the free-to-play game, you kind of have to make it like really optimized for like you should be able to play Smite on a laptop, right? So it can't look Unreal 5 tech demo level amazing, but like, okay, fine, whatever. Maybe on a technical level, it was just worth it. Maybe there was this thing I remember way back in League where League has a ass load of spaghetti code, partially because the guy who coded the engine also was the lead programmer on Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. Did you know that? Did you know that the guy who made the engine for League programmed Big Rigs? Go look it up. That's real. And then he left after like a year and a half or something. So the League engine was like super... There's just new bugs happening all the time that make zero sense. As soon as they introduce something or change something, it like the butterfly effect occurs. I could see that happening with Smite, and you have a game that's so big with so many characters and items and all these little incremental changes by so many different people. I can see how that could turn into a gigantic technical headache. I've heard the term tech debt thrown around to refer to mistakes and weird ways that we did things in a kind of weird way in the past that have kind of built up, and now it's sort of a problem. So redoing it from the ground up, I can see the merit in it. But also, like, as a package, it's still going to be free to play from what I understand. But it's like, I think the game has, the main game, the original game, the current one, has like 180 characters in it or something. The second one's going to launch with like 35. Like... If I mained some character who came out, you know, in those 150-ish characters, right? And they were not included in the new game, I would be pretty bummed out. That's like a lot to take away for a game that is basically eventually going to replace... Like, at least with a fighting game, you still got the old game. Like, it's a separate release. It's not going to replace it. And apparently Smite 2, as of the time being, is not replacing Smite. But I kind of suspect that it's going to at some point. I'm just my notes real quick. It's going to at some point. And when that happens, ooh, people, I know people are going to be mad at high res. They're not going to like it. They are not going to like that. Yeah, just weird. And being reminded of Smite is always funny because I keep my Steam open to, when on like the home tab page, I keep Steam open to the, I have it sorted by time, like hours played. Just, I don't know, that's how I like organizing it and looking at it. And I always look at it and I'm reminded, when did I put 180 hours into Smite? 185.8 hours into Smite. When did I do that? Because, like, I remember I used to play it on the, not on even on Steam, but on the built-in, or their own, like, separate launcher, which means that there's probably even more hours on top of that. Probably, like, at least 200 hours I've put into that game. And I can't tell you a single memory from my entire time playing it. Isn't that weird? Like, not a single... The only thing I can remember is this one time where I was playing this support character. It was, like, the Hindu elephant god. And me and my, like, lane partner got jumped, and we died. And he got mad at me, and I was like, what was I? It was the first time I'd ever played him, because it was like on the free rotation. I just wanted to check it out. This is an unranked game, by the way. This is just a normal game. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? What did you expect me to do there? We died in like 5 seconds. And he typed out, like... He typed out this, like... Light Yagami tier plan of, like, you should have used your E here and then ulted me and then done this and then done that and then but all according to Keikaku. And then you're in the helicopter and you get your memories back. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? This is I don't even remember what all my skills do. That's the one thing I can remember from my entire 200 hours playing that game. So whenever I'm reminded of Smite, I'm like, man, okay. You know what other game I like a lot more that I can name a lot of that I don't think I've put as much time into. I probably haven't. Actually, maybe I have. I'd have to double check. I started playing Final Fantasy XIV again. I dipped into it the other night because I saw Dawn Trail is coming out. I was not caught up. I'm not nearly caught up. I wasn't even through. I didn't even get to Heaven's Word, right? The first expansion. But I saw Dawn Trail was coming out. I saw they added like a new race. Well, technically a new gender for the race. There's furry women in it now. And also the Pictomancer is a new class. And I was like, oh, like Realm from Final Fantasy VI. I love Realm. And you get a big paintbrush and you do all these cool ink effects. It's such a cool idea for a job in the game. And I thought it was really cool. And I was like, oh, man, I should go back to 14. Every time I think about it, I'm like, God, that game's really good. And the reason that I fell off of it is that if you're not aware, so when FF14 got rebooted into 2.0, A Realm Reborn, as it's known. So A Realm Reborn 2.0, that's like a story beginning to end, right? A relatively contained story, sets up the world and stuff. And then in between that and 3.0, the first expansion, Heaven's Word, there were a number of patches. There were like 5 patches, and each of them added a bunch of content, like raids, storylines, like main quest stuff. You cannot get to Heaven's Word until you do all the patch content. Because everything in 14 works based off of quest lines. You do everything via quest lines. You unlock things, you get new features, you get new areas. Everything is via quest lines. They are very important to do. It's not like a lot of other MMOs where you just kind of walk up to something and it's there. You have to go through some sort of, even if it's the most minute thing, like talk to the character who gives you the quest and then talk to them again to complete it kind of thing. That's just how the system works. So you cannot guess. There is a linear progression of main story stuff, and the further you get in the main story, you tend to unlock other stuff on the that branches out from it. So you have to get to a certain point. So you can't just jump into Heaven's Word. If you buy 14 right now, you can't just jump straight into Dawn Trail. You got to go through the whole thing unless you buy a character who is max level. So you have to pay extra. So when you play 14, this is why I totally recommend people to start out with the free trial, because they upped it to, now it's not just the base game and first expansion, it's also the second expansion. You're also getting Stormblood, which is up to like level 70. And again, I know like everyone shills the free trial, but like it's such an insane value. It's such a good value. The only restrictions you have on stuff that you can do are like chat stuff and marketplace things, which is just to prevent people from like making a free account to go into like a public space and just start harassing people. And it's to prevent people from making bots to rig the economy. Like that's the only restrictions you have. You can do everything. You can go through the whole story. 14 is essentially like an RPG that has multiplayer elements in it sporadically. And even now, I keep selling it. I can't talk about this game without trying to sell it. If you don't even like the multiplayer stuff, most of the dungeons that are mandatory can now be done with just NPC companions. So you can just not do anything social in the game if you don't want to. You can, and I think it's fun. I like that part because the 14 community is actually really nice. Like, everyone's super chill. I was doing a raid series when I hopped back in that I had never done before, and I, like, totally died to some stupid shit a couple times. No one mentioned anything. No one got mad, because it's not that big of a deal. We're just doing the normal version, and we're just doing it to, like, clear to farm for, like, a specific item, and if someone dies, it's not even, like, that big of a deal. It's like that. It's the opposite of the League of Legends mentality where dying, like doing poorly is like the most punished thing ever. And doing poorly makes the opponent win more kind of thing. It's like the opposite. It's like, oh, you wiped? No big deal. Just try again. You're not going to lose out on anything. Besides time, I guess. The value is crazy, and that's why I would recommend just going through the free trial, unless you specifically like have friends you want to play with, because you can't form parties if you're a free player. You can, if one person is paid, they can form a party and then invite free players into it, though. So there's that if you got a friend. I would literally just recommend, like, for someone like me, my plan would just be play the free trial until you complete everything in Stormblood, and I want to move on to Shadowbringers, and then I'll start like paying for the game. Once you upgrade, you can't go back. So, excuse me. That was part of the motivations for me to get back in. You know what? I got back in. I had a great time. So here's the problem. A Realm Reborn is known for being pretty rough, and they've taken a lot of the filler content out of it. You can tell that it was made under a lot of stress. And the game is really good. I really liked so much stuff in A Realm Reborn, but there are parts that I acknowledge, okay, this is very dry. Like, in terms of the questing and everything. And the patch content is a bit of a slog. I think it's the biggest barrier, I think, to the smooth experience, to getting to this part where it's the smooth experience. And it's not like it gets good after 100 hours. No, the game is good, like, immediately. I thought it was really good instantly. It's just, you can see the parts where they were like, fuck, we have like 2 years to make this. And the patch content has some cool moments, but it's very long, and there were parts that I really didn't care that much for. And once I got through it, and you're in like the last part of the patch content, you know what? It was totally worth it. It was absolutely worth it. You walk up to complete a quest, and the game gives you a pop-up. It says, when you proceed, several cutscenes will play in sequence. It is recommended that you set aside some time to view them in their entirety. That is literally the message that pops up. And you know what happens? You watch an episode of a TV show. You watch like a 30-minute episode of a TV show in just in-engine cutscenes. And you know what? It was great. I thought it was real. It totally jolted me back into caring about the story. I thought it was really compelling. There was there's like this one character that I love who gets an awesome moment. And I was like, fuck, I want to see. Oh man, this story just gets this whole rush of momentum right now. And now it leads directly into Heavensward. And I did a little stuff after that to get, like, I did some job quests to get some of the new abilities that they added in Heavensward for my favorite jobs, so that I was like kind of, up to snuff for doing the other content, because as soon as your job quests come up, you should really do them. And now I'm in Heavensward, and you know what? I'm in the main city. I believe Kurthus is what it's called. And I think Kurthus, yeah, it's the city, not the region, I believe. And man, I love the aesthetic of Kurthus. It's this like snowy, gothic English castle city. It looks awesome. It's so cool. I love just walking around and the atmosphere and the weather, and it's so good. Yeah, it is a fun game. It's a good game. I like 14 a lot. I could definitely see people. Yeah, A Realm Reborn, I think it is good. But there are rough points that I think people should know about. Sometimes you just got to put your head down, like put a podcast on the back and all that. But yeah, I'm down, and I've heard that it only gets better from there. So I am very excited to play more of the game. Speaking of games and stuff, Konosuba Season 2, because it's like an isekai in like game world, whatever, whatever. Well, it's not like really a game. It's like a game world, but it's like, I don't know. You know what it is. It uses like video game mechanics, but it's like a regular fantasy setting. Konosuba Diba Doo. It is, so we watched it. Again, 10 episodes, pretty short. You can make it through it in like half a day. I think it's better than the first season. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's funnier. It's really we were just laughing more. Like, I remember watching the first season and thinking, like, man, yeah, this was a little bit funnier when I was, like, in high school. And I think part of it is just, like, there's a lot of, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's very anime-type humor and timing and stuff. And in season 2, that stuff gets a lot, I don't know, more accustomed to us, I suppose. More acclimated to us. And it's difficult. So in the first season, Kat liked it, right? Because she liked the characters, and there were some funny concepts. It was just never like, we just weren't laughing that much. It was just like amusing and humorous for the most part. Season 2 was a lot funnier. There's still a lot like little, and I don't know if there's anything very specific, like this is the thing that makes it so much better. I think it literally is just that like the writing got better in the original novels. Like, that's what I assume happened. The timing is a little tighter. There's a lot of, again, like still like very funny, amusing concepts. I love the fact that the season opens with Kazuma being put on trial for all the horrible things he's done in the first season. And yeah, we liked it a lot. And she actually, it went from like, oh yeah, I could watch another season of that. You know, I like the characters too. Oh, she actually wants to watch the third season when it comes out, or like the Megumin spinoff, because she thought this was pretty funny. So yeah, I guess that weirdly, because it was funny because in the first season I remembered like every single episode very clearly, and the second one I didn't quite. Like, I remembered watching it while we were watching, but I kind of forgot like when stuff happened or what I think I could name you almost the premise of almost every episode of the first season. And the second season I couldn't, but I enjoyed it more. So yeah, I guess it and it's a shame because it took like 5 years for a third season to come out. So yeah, we like that. That was a good time. We watched also, a completely unrelated note, we watched Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon is the new Martin Scorsese movie, as you've probably heard of it. It's like 3.5 hours long, or it's like 3 hours long. It's really long. It's like 2 movies in one. And it's really good. It is very, very good. I had a bit of a migraine during the last 30 minutes because I'd been awake for too long and staring at a screen. But it was, it's a really good movie. It is definitely like, okay, I can see why this is one of the films that he would pick to be, you know, in his late life, late career kind of movie. If you don't know the premise of Killers of the Flower Moon, it is based off of a real historical happening. Takes place in the 1920s. Follows Leonardo DiCaprio, who comes home to Oklahoma to live around in the same area as the same town as his uncle, played by Robert De Niro. Now they live in Osage country. The Osage Native American tribe were a tribe who was forced off of their land. As happened with many native tribes in the U.S., they were forced off their land to live on this dedicated territory. And it just so happens that, you know, a couple decades later, it was discovered that there is a fuck ton of oil on that land. There's a lot of oil on that land, baby. And it's not technically United States property. Reservations have like a special status. So I don't know exactly what it is. It might be something close to being like an autonomous community kind of thing, like the Basque region is in Europe, where my people come from. But so they can't just like take ownership of it. So there was a period of time where the Osage people were the richest people in the United States. And they are living large. And so there's a lot going on. And Leonardo DiCaprio comes home from the war. He's going to live with his uncle, Robert De Niro, who has been, well, not live with him, but he's going to like live in the area, in the town. And De Niro's been living in this community for decades. Probably you get this vibe like 20 or 30 years. And he knows these people. He's friends with them. He's seen their children grow up, kind of thing, right? He's considered a friend of the Osage. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but there's a moment at the start of the film where DiCaprio is like, he's got this job driving taxis. He's a driver. That's how he's making his money now. And there's this Osage woman named Molly, and he drives her frequently and kind of tries to make conversation, and he kind of takes a liking to her, but, he hasn't, it's just like a little thing at the moment. And De Niro pulls him aside one day, and he's like, hey, so you know how all the oil money, it's owned by the tribe. They've got this deal where everything is owned by the tribe. If you're in the tribe, you're entitled to a cut of the oil money. He goes, well, if you marry an Osage woman, then that money is in your family. And, she's got like this, she's got these sisters, she's got her mother, and the money's also going to them. But, if there were less Osage people, more of it, would be going to you and your family. And a lot of bad things happen. A lot of bad things happen. I'm going to talk about spoilers now, so let's just skip to the next bit. If you really care, it's a good movie. It's a very good movie. So, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is kind of interesting because he's like a really bad person, but he sort of justifies it by the idea that it's for his family. He really does, like, you get the impression, I don't know, so his problem as a character, like as a person, is that he's just a weak-willed person. He loves his wife, but he won't stand up to his uncle who's killing her family. Right? Like if you really think about it, and you don't even have to really think about it, you just have to observe the movie, DiCaprio's character is complicit and aids in the murder of Molly's siblings. I think her mother dies of natural causes, but like he's right, like he knows what's going on. And like her friends and people she's like probably cousins with, and he doesn't do anything about it because his uncle just kind of walks all over him. He just kind of puppeteers him. What's the uncle's name? I don't know. Just De Niro's character. He comes, this is like the 20s. He's like an old guy. So he's definitely like he was probably born in like the early 1800s, like the 1830s or something. He's coming from a world where things like political marriages are very normal. That was kind of one of my early impressions of him. He's coming from a world where marrying someone for money is very, it's really normal. And also he's living in kind of a new world with this stuff like insurance. So De Niro's his whole thing is just committing insurance fraud. He takes out these insurance claims on stuff, and then something bad happens to it, and then he collects the insurance money. And he does this. This is like his main thing. This system has popped up that's relatively new in his lifetime, and he's just exploiting it for money, and he's arranging things because he's such a powerful guy with the way he can influence people. And you get these points where he like takes out a life insurance policy on someone. Like he is such a fucking awful human being. There's this guy like I think the character's name is Henry. This guy, he's known for years, probably like 10 years is the vibe you get. And Henry, he's Osage, and he's depressed, and he's tried to commit suicide twice already. They call it he's got the melancholies. That's what they call it, because it's the 20s. He's tried to commit suicide twice, and De Niro is like, well, that he just sees profit. He just sees potential money, so he has him sign a life insurance policy. And then he arranges to have him killed, to have the guy killed. And it's like, holy shit. He's like inhuman. He's like a level. It goes from like, he's kind of a scumbag who like gets his nephew to get into this kind of like marriage for money to, oh, he's like a real scumbag. He's like a real monster. And when he starts, there's stuff that happens before that, right? That's not the first thing that happens, but that was like one of the very specific things that's like, wow, that's like a very personal relationship that you didn't give a fuck about. And there's this great scene. I love it because he reminds me of my grandfather, where he's talking to the tax attorney. And for whatever reason they don't go into, there's been some kind of a conflict with someone in Denver. I don't know. They never say exactly what it is, but he just says like, yeah, Denver is disputing the claim. He's like, what the hell do I care about Denver? And the guy's like, they've made a dispute and it'll take a while. And he's just like, where's my Henry whatever money? That's how he calls it. It's like, Jesus Christ. And things just kind of keep escalating and escalating where DiCaprio is doing some really bad, just these awful things, some really awful stuff. And he's kind of justifying it by the fact that he can kind of ignore it. And, well, his uncle told him to do it. And, oh, it's for my family. And, it's one of those things where the character's logic is that it only works because he's not trying not to think about it. And he's in denial. He's in like a kind of a sense of denial or willful ignorance where he's not, if he was to actually sit down and think about what he was doing, probably maybe would be changing his ways a little bit. But he never does that, and no one's ever around to do that because it's all kept so secretive. His wife has diabetes, and Molly's got diabetes, and they get her insulin, which at the time was brand new, and they could only afford it because of all the oil money they've got. And the insulin, so she's getting like, she starts to take matters into her own hands, and she starts to go petitioning, like she goes up to Washington to try and get them to send someone down to investigate the murders that have been going on. There's like 30 murders, just random deaths. Like that doesn't just happen. And they start telling DiCaprio, because he's the one administered, because she doesn't trust the doctors. They start telling him to give her a little bit of, they don't say what it is, but it's clearly some kind of poison. Like slowly poison her through her insulin. And it's like, oh, dude. Oh, there's no coming back from this. There's no coming back from this. I think the biggest there's a big turning point. So things just, the first like half of the movie, which is like an hour and a half, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And DiCaprio is complicit and he's doing certain things. And it starts changing when at the halfway point, I felt, which is where things start to get a little too real. And the guy that they hire to take out someone he puts a little too much dynamite under the house. And dude, there was this shot. DiCaprio and Molly, they're in bed. And they're in their bedroom, and the lights go out, and the camera just pulls back, and they're on the right, and the windows are on the left. And I was like, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. There's too much negative space in this. And then, boom! The windows get blown out. The whole place, it's this gigantic explosion. It's like, oh, holy shit. And they go out, and this entire house is just a pile of rubble. There's corpses. It's really bad. It's gory as fuck. DiCaprio is walking out, and he's just like, it's the first moment that it gets real for him. Because every other time, he's kind of been able to like ignore it, or he didn't like see the person die, or he was kind of on the sidelines. And it was always like it was a singular person. This is like the wife died, like the husband died who they were targeting, the wife died, the maid died. There was probably other people in that house. There's at least like 2 innocent deaths of people that they knew. And it was a house that his wife had been at like 2 hours earlier, like earlier in that scene. She gets home from their place. And he's just kind of walking, and everyone's just running outside to see what's going on. And he's just kind of walking, and his face, he's just like, oh, like this is new. This is a new experience. And he's seeing the effect. It's not subtle anymore. It's not quiet. It's literally a gigantic explosion. And that's the point, I think, where he starts to kind of turn a little bit. And the conflict starts to arise more so, like in him internally. And then later on, he is not, it's like something's really wrong. Something's really bad about what he's doing, and it's getting really hard for him to ignore it. He can't ignore it anymore. And then his uncle has him sign a life insurance policy. And he's like, why? And his uncle says, oh, it's just a formality. It's just in case something happens. And you're like, oh no. And I think he signs it, but there's like he's starting to see this ruthless, sociopathic quality in his uncle. That he sees even his nephew as just kind of a tool to keep the fucking oil money. After that point as well, that's around the time that a new element gets introduced, which really spices the movie up, which is, hi, I'm from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And DiCaprio looks at him like, the what? Because it was just founded, right? Hoover's president at the moment. He's just founded the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So now the government's involved, like the federal government. And De Niro, he can manipulate the tiny little town. He can even pull some influence on the state level. But he can't fuck with the government. And he knows that, and that's like a significant threat. If you take out, because there were private investigators that were hired earlier in the movie, they both got taken out, like killed. If you kill a federal agent, like if he doesn't show back up, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're not gonna be able to stop it. So then now there's this like intense pressure on them that like, oh god, they're gonna find something out, and they find something out. And then the last 30 minutes of the movie it turns into like not a courtroom drama. There is a courtroom and there is drama. But it sort of surrounds this new court case. And there's this whole back and forth of, does he side with his uncle? Does he side with the Osage people, Who is he loyal to? And the whale shows up. The hell is his name? Oh my god. If this was any other day, I'd be able to remember his name. Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser shows up, and he's good. He is a really good actor, man. He shows up for this kind of small part. He's playing the attorney for De Niro's character. And God, there's just this scene where DiCaprio goes back home and he gets called into it's like the whole, all the whites in town, including his other family and the lawyer are there. And they're basically telling him not to testify against his uncle. And he's under all this pressure, and you see there's totally this element, and I think in the modern day, we've thankfully I think kind of got I think people are a little more, how would you say it? A little more reasonable about not being so slavishly devoted to the idea of preserving the family image. De Niro should fucking rot in jail forever, right? That's the kind of character he is. He should rot in jail. You can't, you don't fix someone like that. He is a calculated piece of evil. But his aunt is oh, you can't sell out your uncle. And DiCaprio, who is just this total spineless coward, is just, No, of course I will. He folds instantly to pressure. And you're like, dude, don't. And I think the moment where that changes, is when he meets, I'm trying to put the plot points in order. I believe where it changes is it? I think it is. There's a scene where he meets up with Molly. So Molly has been taking her medicine at home. She's been being slowly poisoned at home, and her condition just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's oh man, it's very stressful to watch as she's just sweaty and in bed and just you're oh fuck, dude, this is not good. This is very concerned for her. And then I think the FBI they got a different doctor, and they go into the house and they find her. They're what the fuck? You're telling me she's been taking insulin? No way, dude. This is not how someone... What the fuck is going on here? So they take her to a hospital, and they literally have her guarded with there's a guard in her hospital room with a gun sitting by the door. And they start actually treating her properly, and she makes a complete recovery, and she's fine now. And obviously she learned some stuff while she was in the hospital. They don't show that, but you can just kind of intuit. And they have this meeting between her and DiCaprio. And oh no, wait, I think that happened afterwards. I forget what it was that made him turn around. Oh, his fucking I think it's his daughter died or something. A lot of shit goes down, and eventually DiCaprio decides that he's not going to defend his uncle. Let's see. Yeah, it was his daughter's death. Makes him think really critically about the people who are actually important to him. And he testifies against his uncle. And then there's just this scene after Molly, she's recovered. She's been sitting in on the proceedings. And during it, he says, like, yes, I was complicit in this. Yes, I helped him. He says all the things that he admits to everything. And they ask him, was part of the scheme to get you to marry, that you would marry Molly's, I forget what her last name is, her like maiden name is, to marry your wife. And he goes, no, I married her because I loved her. And they have this scene, and she asks him like if he told the truth, and he says he did. And she asks him, what did you put in my insulin? Or like, what did you give me in my injections? And there's this moment, and you just see that like spinelessness again in him. And he just freezes, and he's visibly like nervous. Like you can see the anxiety in his stomach. And he says, just insulin. And she looks at him for a few seconds, and then she just leaves the room. And it's like, fuck. Her acting is tremendous. I haven't talked about her too much because she's not quite the main character. Lily Gladstone is fantastic. If she won an Oscar for this movie, she would totally deserve it. She just has this wonderful presence. She has this really powerful on-screen aura to her, where she, like, the scenes where they're getting to know each other at the start of the movie there's this great scene where he's at her house and he's trying to make conversation. He'll like ask her a question, and she doesn't even answer. She just kind of like smirks at him. And like the silence and his, you can kind of see the root of like how, again, like the spinelessness a little bit. He's just completely paralyzed by just her gaze. Like she's really good in the movie. Everyone gives a really good performance. You would kind of expect it with the cast like this. Apparently very historically accurate. Scorsese was very committed to portraying the story of what happened here. Consulted with a lot of Osage people. They speak Osage in the movie, like very often. In fact, one of the ways that you can tell the passage of time is that DiCaprio's character can speak, like, from what I can tell, fluent Osage. After a certain point. So you're like, oh, he's been there a couple years. And then you see like their kids growing up and you're like, okay, yeah, time has passed. So and they don't put subtitles on those Osage lines either. You just kind of have to intuit what's going on. And I think that's an interesting decision, because there's got to be like less than, how many people do you think speak? Let me look this up. How many people speak Osage? The Osage language. It's a Siouan? Is that how it is? The U.S. state of Oklahoma. Oh, it's extinct. Oh, revival. As of 2009, there are 15 to 20 speakers. Yeah. So, there's like 20 people in the world who speak this language. As of 2009, about 15 to 20 elders were second language speakers of Osage. The Osage language program, created in 2003, provides audio and video learning materials on its website. Yada yada. So, legislative responses to the movie, huh? Lieutenant Governor of Oklahoma named the film as a reason to increase subsidies for the film industry in Oklahoma. Okay. Yeah, so there's having no subtitles in those sections. Sorry for the long moments of unbroken silence. Having no subtitles in those sections it's an interesting choice because it's okay. No one knows what they're saying, but I think you can generally follow it. It's a very good movie. I thought it was great. And that leads me into my next topic, which is some games that I played. I'm gonna start off with a game called No One Lives Under the Lighthouse. This is a game that I was listening to a podcast, and someone recommended this movie. Sorry, this book. Yeah, what the fuck? This game. And I was like, that sounds really good. And they didn't really mention. They went into. They were very vague about it. And I was like, excuse me. I was like, okay, let me check this out because it's cheap, and apparently it's pretty short. Originally came out in 2020, and then had a director's cut version in 2021 or something, 22. So No One Lives Under the Lighthouse is a self-described slow burn horror game. It has this PS1 style graphics art style, and where everything's very low poly, low draw distance, wobbly textures and polygons and all that. It takes place entirely on this island, this small island in, I believe, Scotland, where you are the new lighthouse keeper, and you have to you have to just do a couple tasks every night. Fill the lighthouse with, fill the light with the oil, and then do the crank so that it spins. But I think, as you can probably guess, things start to go weird. Now, the game is titled No One Lives Under the Lighthouse, and you are apparently alone on this island. However, stuff starts to happen that makes you question that. Very quickly, in fact, that you might actually not be alone. But what is on the island? What could it be? What is it doing? The game is about 2 hours long. It took me 3 hours just because I kind of take my time when I got hung up on a couple spots. But it's about 2 hours long. It's really arranged into two halves. And if that sounds curious to you, it's this intense, slow burn atmospheric game. You should go check it out. It's really cheap. It's like $6 on Steam. Now, I'm going to get into spoilers because I would like to talk about it. So, the first hour of this game is really interesting because you're going through the day by day on this lighthouse. There's 4 days, I believe, that go by. And you're doing lighthouse stuff, but then something weird happens, and the escalation is really good. It's really nice because you're spending a lot of time doing kind of menial stuff, and it'll be punctuated by something weird happening or something freaky that builds the tension, and it starts escalating and escalating over the course of these 4 nights until finally you hit the I guess what you'd call it, like the climax, the climactic point. And then the second hour of the game goes off the rails in such a way that I found extremely lame and disappointing, unfortunately. Yeah, it's one of those. I thought the first hour of this game was awesome, and I think if the game was just like 30... If it was just like... Okay, I guess I have to get into specifics. So, there's these little teases. There's a monster on the island. There's a presence. There's an entity on the island. And you do this... The first time you ever really run into it, you ever really encounter it, is this moment where you are You go to the lighthouse, and one of the sandbags at the bottom of the rope they've been destroyed. The sandbags and the rope have been destroyed. So you have to walk back and forth from the storehouse to the lighthouse. Carry the rope, and then you carry the bag. You can only carry one of the bags at a time. You need 3 of them. And on your way back with the 3rd bag, suddenly, screen goes black. It shows, and then it what do you say? It fades back in. Yeah, that's the phrase. It fades back in, and the game goes into a second-person chase sequence. Yeah, the only time I've ever seen this is in like Driver San Francisco, which is a game where there's a chase scene in which you are in the perspective of, you're controlling your same character, but you're seeing it through the eyes of the car that's chasing them. This does a similar thing. You're seeing through the eyes of the monster looking at your character, and you are controlling the character, and you have to run away back to the storehouse, back to safety. And it's really cool. It's really neat. And like the one thing that I was like, you can see these kind of like either tendrils or little pincer claw type things from the edge of the screen, like the corner of the screen, like because it's from the monster's perspective. I guess that's its appendages or whatever. And I wish it didn't have that. I wish it was just. I wish you just saw the eye, like through its eye, so you wouldn't quite have you would have like even less of an idea of what it really is. I think that's what's so scary, is like the mystery. The mystery is so scary. The mystery is so scary in this game because you have no idea. Is it a person? Is it a monster? What is it? And I think just getting an idea of like how tall it is, because it is taller than your character. That's cool. I think that's a neat idea. But okay, whatever. Little did I know that in the second half of the game, they would not only show the entire monster, but ask you to shoot it with a shotgun. Yeah, it goes there. So you go through all these sequences, and on the last night, you finally go down into the basement. And the basement changes. It's like this little room, because one time you go in and the oil is in the room in the lighthouse. There's like the staircase that leads up, and then there's a door to a little room, and in the room there's the hatch to the basement. In that room is the oil. You walk in one time, the oil's not there, and you go down, and it's in the basement, and it's really fucking scary. It is extremely tense. The atmosphere is just like, it's just impeccable. It is such a creepy game. I was so creeped out playing it. And then the last night you go down to the basement, and a chase scene starts. The monster's behind you, and now it's not just this little room in the basement. It's like this whole tunnel, and you're running down the tunnel, and I hung a left, and I ended up down in this massive underground area, or this underground like cave system. And you're just walking around, and you're seeing these skeletons, these human skeletons around this weird cave system. You're walking through, and I'm like, whoa, wait. Is this like a trap? Am I like a food source for this monster? Or am I the person under the lighthouse now? I thought that's where it was going. I thought it was going in the direction of the lighthouse keepers end up getting lured down underneath the lighthouse by this monster. And then and then it hunts them underneath. And the person who was trying to contact me was actually like, because you get this creepy stuff. Like, you close the door to the base, to like that room with the basement, and then you just hear this banging on the door, and then the door's locked, and you're like, ugh. Like creepy stuff like that. The sound is great. I'm someone who's very sensitive to sound as a horror horror device. Visuals are one thing, but if you just play these kind of like loud, disconcerting noises, which this game has a lot of like these weird distorted wails and like kind of like that, those kinds of noises that'll just play like a siren, that kind of a sound, banging, or the sound of someone hitting the steps, right? That stuff is so freaky. You know, you wake up one morning and you hear footsteps on your roof, and the roof caves in, and you go to look in on it, and there's no one there. But the whole kitchen is just like a mess, and you got to go fix your roof and put everything back in place. And it's like, oh, dude, that it's so just like the sound of the steps on the roof. The soundscape in the game is so good. And then you're in this, and I'm like, wow, the game, I'm probably going to get like one more big reveal, and then the game's going to be over. And then it keeps going. And then it keeps going. And you like turn this crank, and a door opens, like a wall opens up, and you're in like another place, and there's like a statue with a knife. I'm like, okay, this is where the big reveal is, or something. Or do I die? What's going on? And then it starts doing this shit where you start flashing back to the past, and you start flipping around. Like, I can't even remember like what happens because it's so random and disjointed. You just get all these like little vignettes of, oh, there used to be a bunch of more buildings here and more people who lived on the island, and then it just kind of keeps going, and then now you're in this underground giant stone complex. And it leans really hard into like Lovecraft. Whoa, do you know H.P. Lovecraft? And like this, you're in this like big stone set of bridges, and you got to find these medallions, and the monster shows up, and you just get like a full view of the monster, and the monster's chasing you, and then you got to find all the medallions, then you got to put them in this like one room, and then another wall opens up, and the game's still not fucking over. There's like another 40 minutes, and then you just keep going and going and going, and there's just more completely pointless feeling sections that like don't feel like they're saying anything. And it's just like, the monster, whoa, look at the monster again. And it's like, and then you have this whole long extended thing where you replay the game from the monster's perspective, which probably sounded really cool, but makes it really, like, completely deflates all of the horror. like, whoa, did you know that when that on that third day, when the rope and the bags got destroyed, the monster was the one who destroyed them? Yeah, I figured. You're gonna play through that. You're gonna do that now with these awful wall climbing controls that really suck. Because sometimes the monster has weird like first person tank controls, and now you're in this section where you're walking around this town. You got to figure out what to do, and it's like the game had so much momentum. The game had so much. The game really had something going on, and it just, in the last like hour and a half of my playtime, just completely fumbles it so fucking hard and gets into such lame like, look at our lore! Whoa! Guess what? It's a metaphor for the cycles of guilt. It's like I Divine Cybermancy, a game with a plot that doesn't make any fucking sense. Until you beat it like 4 times. Yeah, it's not a compliment to compare it to I like that. Yeah, it just goes so hard. And then, like, the ending is just, like, it just feels fucking random. And I know that I'm probably, oh, yeah, like, so I got the wrong ending because there's these, like, medallions that you collect throughout the game. And I guess I missed one of them. There's this chest in your room, and once you get all 4 medallions, you can unlock the chest. And I think I missed one of them, which I don't know how I did that, but I did, and the game like let me progress past that. So I didn't get all of them, which means I didn't open the chest. Now, inside of the chest is a shotgun, which you're supposed to fight the final boss, where you just shoot this Lovecraftian monster. But I didn't have that, so I just died, and then it put me into like a different ending track or something. And to be honest, this is like not a good game, I feel like, to have multiple endings. Because it was cool, like that first half was cool the first time. I don't know if I could put up with... I think it would just get really tedious to do it again. Because all that slow burn horror stuff was neat when I didn't know what was going to happen. Maybe not again. I mean, is there a chapter select? There might be. I don't really have any desire to play it again because that second half tanks the experience so hard into lame territory. And here's what's interesting. This is not technically... The game I'm talking about is not technically No One Lives Under the Lighthouse. It is No One Lives Under the Lighthouse Director's Cut. Because there was the original release was in 2020, and then they had the Director's Cut. And apparently, the Director's Cut completely overhauled the second half of the game. And I wonder, I'm almost curious enough to want to go back and play the original to see if it's less lame. Because I was really disappointed. Like the feeling of tension and horror in that first half is palpable. It's so thick. And you walk out on the third day, the rain is so intense. It's just this downpour, like you can hardly see anything. But in a funny way, the low draw distance of the game helps it, because all you can see is just like the polygons of the lighthouse to serve as like your thing in the distance. Like you're seeing it through the rain and through the clouds. It's just, there's so much cool, good, like genuinely good stuff in that first half. And in the second half, there is nothing scary. I was not creeped out a single time. I was just annoyed and kind of bored and a little confused. It completely fumbles it in that second half. Really unfortunate. If you want to check it out for yourself, feel free. Again, it's like $6. But yeah, I'm curious to know if the person who recommended it played the original version or the director's cut, and how much of a difference that makes. And to wrap things up, a little game called Nox. Nox is a... it's usually described as like a... It's like a Western... I thought it was going to be more of like something more similar to like an Ultima 7 kind of thing. No, it is an action RPG. It's a top-down action RPG from 2000, which is from Westwood Studios, who you might know from Command & Conquer, Dune 2, the first RTS, mind you, Blade Runner, the 1997 game. Classic stuff. And they put out this game called Nox in 2000. Nox is, I got it on GOG, because I was like, you know what? Because when I played Ultima 4, when I was playing a little bit of Ultima 4, I was like, turns out that it's free on GOG, the original game. So I was like, oh, okay. Because it was such... I didn't even realize that if I know that I would have just done that in the first place. But I went through all these hoops trying to get Ultima 4 to work through like other downloads. It just sucked ass. Anyway, I was like, I should probably use GOG more. They've got a lot of games that are really up my alley. Like older stuff. They are good old games, Old PC games. I love that stuff. One of them was called Nox. It was on sale for like $1 or something. Is it still on sale? Hang on. It says minus 77%. It's still $1.37 on. Oh, it ends in 22 hours. Okay. if you listen to this podcast early, then I guess you'll be you'll be there in time. Anyway, it's this quirky little game. It has that same kind of like pre-rendered CG sprites art style that a lot of the other Westwood Studios games have. You play as this guy who gets isekai'd to a fantasy world called Nox. And it turns out that there's like this evil... there's this evil, sexy goth sorceress queen named Hecuba who is going to take over the land. And you got to do some adventuring to stop her. So Nox is really fun. It's actually a really good game. I'd never heard of it before this. It's a really fun game. So essentially there are 3 different storylines, depending on which... There's 3 classes, and each class has a different storyline. I'm just playing the wizard right now. I'm not done with it at all. I'm like maybe 20% through the game. But I really like it, and I want to talk about it. Because if it keeps up the quality at all, then I think it'll be at least pretty solid of a recommendation. So the game has like a kind of funky sense of humor. It's not taking itself that seriously. And it's a top-down action RPG, and it has this kind of strange control scheme that it took me a minute to get used to. You do all of your moving with the mouse. So you like right-click to move around. And the cursor does this weird thing where it like rotates in relation to where your character is on screen. So like your character is always in the center of the screen. And the cursor that was weird to get used to because it feels like the point where you click changes. It's weird. Once you get used to it, as the wizard character, I had these. You get all these spells, and all the spells kind of like cast in real time. Yeah, it's just like action RPG gameplay with a top-down perspective, and everything's happening in real time, and you like cast things roundabouts to like, oh, you shoot out the magic missiles, and they shoot to around where your cursor is, kind of thing. You control everything with your cursor. It's a little finicky. It's a little like slippery. Moving around is kind of slippery at first, but you get used to it. And there's some really cool ideas in it. The combat is decently fun. It just progresses at a very very even clip. Each class has about 10 chapters to their story, and I'm on like chapter 4, and that was after about, I want to say 3 hours or something, 3-4 hours. Not too long to play to get that deep into the game. So there's like a decent amount of game there. And there's some fun ideas already. So like you get a spell that it lets you, there's just like regular combat stuff, there's healing stuff, you can make a barrier to protect yourself kind of thing. But you get this one spell that lets you switch positions with a different character. And the way that it's introduced to you is you want the room where you get it, as soon as you pick it up, because you got to pick up spell books to learn them. As soon as you pick it up and learn it, this cage pops up around you. You're trapped in, and they spawn this like spider outside the cage, and you got to use it on the spider, and now you're outside the cage. Cool. Okay. And I was going along, and there's this section where you're in these like underground caverns where these bandits have their hideout, and there's this like long stretch where there's this wall on the side. And there's a whole other area on the other side of that wall, but you can't get to that till much later in the chapter. However, that's under normal circumstances. However, there's these little like peepholes where there's like archers shooting at you through them. And if you walk up, you can like walk up and just fireball blast the archer through the wall, through the hole. And then you get a line of sight to like a sword guy, like a sword wielding enemy. And then you could just swap places with him, and now you're on the other side earlier than if you had just not done that before. And then you can snipe all of the other archers safely without them even seeing you. Like cool, there's some cool stuff like that where they give you abilities that can be used in nifty, creative ways. And I'm hoping that there will be more of them and that there will be more interesting opportunities to use them, because I think that's some of the most satisfying stuff in the game. Like, the point where I realized I could do that and then it worked was great. You know me. I love games that just give you lots of cool abilities and interesting tools, and they let you use them in creative ways in kind of like open, you'd call it like an enclosed sandbox, maybe. It's one of the reasons I love Blood. That's the reason I love immersive sims so much, because it's a genre that's practically based around that. And that's I'm hoping that there's more of that in the game. But otherwise, it's just like a pretty solid, fun action RPG. Yeah, there's like, so you have like 5 abilities. You have 5 slots for abilities on your hotbar, but you have 5 different hotbars that you can have, which suggests to me that there's 25 spells. If so, like, that's a lot. By the end of chapter 3, I had 2 full rows, so I had like 10 different spells. So I don't know how many they're just going to shower me with, but if there's even more cool stuff down the line, I'm looking forward to it. There's a neat thing where, so you get like a spell that lets you draw objects towards you. There's a bunch of like movable objects. There's like there's like secret walls that you can break to reveal little like hidden treasures and stuff like that. It's got stuff like a lot of like interacting and bumping up with the environment sort of thing. The game has this line of sight system where stuff will block your line of sight. Probably same tech that they used from like Command and Conquer. So you need sight lines for certain abilities. You can literally look through windows, which is neat. And so there's like this area where, this was kind of off topic. That was off topic, but there's like this fire raging, and you have this ability that draws objects towards you. And there's all these buckets of water, these barrels of water on the other side, and you use it a couple times, and you can put out all the fires by having them tip by making the barrels tip into the fire, which is cool. I was just thinking, like, man, I think it would be fun to have like a fantasy game with a lot of nifty, like multi-purpose kind of ImSim type of tools in it, form of like magic and stuff like that. And I can definitely I wish some of the solutions to these things were, they present themselves more as like puzzles rather than things that, a puzzle with a specific answer rather than a situation that has multiple answers, which is what I usually prefer. But using the abilities in neat ways is like cool, and I like it. Excuse me. So I don't know anything about the other classes, but I'm having a good time. Also, it has multiplayer, which is weird. There's like versus multiplayer in it. So that's cool. Yeah, definitely like probably from my experience so far, definitely kind of an underrated feeling game because I've never heard anyone talk about it. And I'm playing, I'm like, this is good. This is a good, fun time. Yeah, Nox by Westwood Studios. Very cheap. And even the regular price on GOG is like also like $6. Like it's not a huge investment. And I don't know if there's anything I really want to talk about that's left. You know, a bit of a short podcast this time. I'm going to wrap it up. My nose has been itchy this entire time. Like, I've been scratching my nose the whole time because of the vibrations of my voice. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. If you have been listening this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I'll be back next week with more stuff. And the video is currently being worked on. Thank you so much. Goodbye.